Kickass Radio, hosted by Jo Sainsbury, founder of Kickass Women. Join Jo over the next hour as she shares stories and conversations that are both inspiring and empowering. Having spent over 30 years in the corporate sector, Jo Sainsbury kicked off her heels and became a coal train driver working in the rail and mining industry. It has been her goal ever since to empower and support women who are considering a career change into an industry role, making the transition as smooth as possible. Jo is a walking, talking success story of how taking the plunge into industry can open up a world of opportunity. And you can do it too. If you're a woman working in industry or considering a career change, this is the radio station for you. Let's get into this episode of Kickass Radio.
Good morning. How are you, Glo-getters? Welcome to the Kickass Radio Show. Am I excited for today's show? You bet your kick-ass I am. Today, we are challenging the status quo and diving into the world of inclusion and diversity. Women in industry don't always get a fair go on their work sites, and they face a number of challenges. So let's talk about how we all benefit from smashing barriers to create more supportive workplaces. Our guest today is just one kick-ass woman that is making waves in the realm of inclusion and diversity, striving to implement change and greater female inclusion within it. So our guest is female inclusion expert Christy Christensen, founder of She's Free to Be, located across the ditch from Australia in New Zealand. Christy is director and female inclusion expert at She's Free to Be Limited. She's experienced technical and operations leader with experience in geology, geotechnical engineering, gas drainage and mining engineering in gold, coal and iron sand commodities across Australia and New Zealand. And during her 15-year career in the mining industry, and most prominently when she worked in underground coal mining, she felt the structural barriers that exist in our mining workplaces. Now, she is on a mission to help organisations correct the many small issues which, when combined, add up to a workplace experience that doesn't welcome, care for or value women. Her goal was to ensure that the workplace works for women and so that everyone thrives. And we know creating equitable work sites that are free of harassment and provide equal opportunity for women to learn, work and advance in the organisation is critical to retaining tradeswomen and other underrepresented groups in the industry. And moreover, a more respectful and inclusive culture benefits all workers. It improves cooperation, it cultivates the best talent and builds your reputation as a fair and desirable employer and progressive builder whose workforce mirrors the makeup of the community. You are listening to the Kickass Radio Show Kickstart, where we talk about all things women working in non-traditional roles in very male-dominated industries, and I tell you how it is. I'm your host, Jo Sainsbury, the Glo-getter, and I hope we can keep you in good company over the coming hour. A huge shout out to all the women working out on track and on site today, all over the globe. Stay safe and have a fantastic day or night shift. And this might also be a good time for a trigger warning that today's radio show may and does contain some adult language. Let's get into it and welcome aboard, Christy.
Hello, how are you going?
Hey, Christy, welcome to the Kickass Radio Show. Firstly, thank you for coming on the show and for sharing some of your valuable time with us today. I know you're super busy, but I also know we are all going to enjoy your company and we're eager to hear some invaluable advice from you, which will ensure women can feel cared for and valued and welcomed on site. So let me just say that I really admire your passion and commitment and the enormous amount of work you have been doing in this space of female inclusion in the workplace. And your resume reads like a glossary. You have such a broad and vast knowledge and experience base. So first up, can you tell us how you came to forge a career in the STEM field and in particular engineering?
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a science lover. That's kind of how I got into it. My grandfather actually, when I was just little, my grandfather and my mum's family, they lived in Papua New Guinea. So that my grandfather had a massive rock collection and I used to love going through it and like picking all my favorite rocks. And every now and again, I got to take one home with me. So I've always had a rock collection. I am a rock lover from way back. But yeah, so when I was like 13, I was looking through career books and I was like, oh, you always wonder what you're going to do and you've got a million plans. But I found geologists in there and I was like, oh, what's that about? Had a wee look and I was like, oh, wow, like I can get paid pretty good to do like what I love, like looking at rocks. And then also because it said that you have a pretty good balance of office work and field work. And I loved tramping and stuff. So yeah, I was like, sweet as, that's what I'm going to go for. And so I did. So I enrolled in and got a Bachelor of Science at the University of Auckland. Did a 3-year degree and then decided I wasn't going to stay on for the masters and stuff. I was like, bugger that, I want to work. That was always my plan. So yeah, did that, ended up in gold exploration. So it took me a little while, had to build up my connections to get a job in New Zealand, just because it's quite a smaller industry than Australia. Worked in gold exploration for 2 years as a junior geo, and then the GFC hit. So when the GFC hit, a lot of junior explorers really struggled to get funding. We were one of them, and I lost my job. So I was like, okay, what's next? Always had a plan, maybe including Australia. And it's always been something that appealed to me because of the size of the industry. So applied for a bunch of jobs, had a terrible job interview, but still managed to land the job in Queensland in an underground coal mine. Yeah, it was terrible. Like I'd never been to Australia. Oh, actually that's like I'd been to Wollongong before, but I'd never been to Australia, like Queensland. And I thought, like, I just didn't have a concept of how big it is because New Zealand's so little. And I was late to my, I was supposed to do a coal board medical and I couldn't find the place. I flew into Mackay and I thought I was all sorted. It was before you had Google on a big smartphone. And I got really lost in Mackay and ended up in central Mackay and didn't realize there was even like a North Mackay. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going. So I was late, missed my coal board medical, late to the interview. And so I didn't get to go underground. But in retrospect, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I think perhaps if I'd gone underground, I may have said no. But yeah, so I ended up working in coal mining. So took the job, ended up going out on site and was like, okay, so where's all the other chicks? And they're like, other women? And I'm like, yep, other women. And they're like, nope, you're it. And I was like, you're joking, right? Like, I'm not the only woman. And they were like, you are the only woman. And they're like, oh, the last time someone worked here, last time a woman worked here was like 8 years ago. I was like, shit. Yeah. Oh dear, what have I gotten myself into? And it was hard because it was quite lonely, being an only one, but we all know what only one feels like, unfortunately, but that's changing. So yeah, I ended up sticking it out, even though it felt pretty lonely to begin with. I managed to just carve my own path and had a blast along the way. All the boys, I loved working underground. Like I loved just being like right in the geology. It was fascinating. So many cool fossils, and you get to see like the scale of underground is just phenomenal. Like people just you can't understand it until you've been there. Like I took my mum and dad underground and they were like speechless after, just like, wow, I don't even know what to say. So yeah, like had a blast, and then decided I'd pack it in Queensland, because I got headhunted for a role down in New South Wales in the Illawarra coalfields. So I was just like, are you for reals? I get to like live on the beach and work's only half an hour away up the escarpment. So yeah, ended up going down there, and that's when everything kind of, I guess, hotted up for me in regards to my career path. I was really well supported there by management. One of my mentor was a mine manager, so I ended up working my way through different roles in the organisation, through all of our, well, you know, there's a lot of mining companies that like to do organisational restructures, and you can think of them in a bad way, or you can think of them like, how much opportunity is there to change? So I started as a geotech because I upskilled, went to UNSW and did my master's there. And then ended up going into gas drainage, and I loved that. It was so much fun. I've always loved working with drillers. They have a really hilarious sense of humour. So worked with the drillers, and then ended up running that department, which was so much fun. We had like 14 rigs and everything was always go, go, go. But really enjoyed that, and then ended up doing some mining engineering, so doing planning for that department, and then senior geotech, and then decided to come back to New Zealand. So I'm senior mining engineer now, but also running She's Free to Be. So a bit of a crazy experience, but so much fun. I've loved it.
And that's a quite a formidable portfolio you've created, and you should be congratulated on all your achievements and the journey that you've trekked, because to go across that amount of careers or roles and to gain that experience, that's phenomenal. Like and to see such vast differences. Like in regards to the underground, we have a great resource centre of excellence just opened, or not so long ago, in Mackay here, which takes you on an underground experience. And I've yet to do it yet, but I'm looking forward to doing it. So yeah, if women want to have a look at the underground experience here in Central Queensland, they can definitely head to the Resource Centre of Excellence and experience that underground, a look into what it entails. So that's excellent. You've set a great example of just what is achievable within all aspects of the STEM field. So and we might have touched on it a bit, but how did you become so passionate about diversity and inclusion? Did it derive from a particular experience you had whilst going through this career journey?
Yeah, well, I've always been, I guess I would explain myself as probably the biggest thing is always curious. Like I always want to learn more. I'm like the biggest sponge. I just love learning. And I'm really passionate about mining after being in the industry. So I actually read, there's a fella called, I'm probably going to say his name wrong, but Dean LePlong, and he wrote this book called So You Think You're Tough. And that was the first, so I've always kind of felt like, I've always been able to build a sense of belonging with the crews underground and always kind of have my own little area, but there's still that sense of aloneness that I always carried around with me, that only one aloneness. And it's hard to carry with you, but I read that book and I was like, he's right, this is shit sometimes. Like some days suck. And he explained a little bit about it. I was doing a leadership course at the time with Women in Leadership Australia. And I was just like, this is just rubbish. Like it's kind of shitty that this has to be how it is. And I'm sure we can do better. And then I got pregnant, and that was a really transformative time in my life, just because so it took 2 years for me to get pregnant. So I had a bit of time to think about it. However, you don't really want to, like, when you're trying to get pregnant, you try really hard not to think about it too much, because you're not trying to be all like, oh, okay, so it's going to happen this month, because then it's just depressing. So 2 years it took me to get my son Zach in the bag, but got him in the bag. And then I was like, all right. So I was on holiday at the time we found out I was pregnant, and we were excited. And then I was just fucking terrified, because I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like I'm pregnant. Great. So like, I've got to go back to work in 2 weeks and go underground. And what does that look like? And I was like, oh, I don't actually know. And I had because I'm a technical person, I had my laptop. So I searched through everything they had on site, through all of our documents. And I was like, there's really nothing to guide me here. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. I feel like shit. Feel vommy. And I was just like, I don't really know what I'm going to do now. And I thought, oh, well, you know what? I'll just give it a crack. I'll go back to work. I'll see how I am. And I wasn't good. And I went underground, and it was the worst experience of my life. I forgot my self-rescuer. Anyone who works in underground knows self-rescuers are like your lifeline. And I legit was so tired and so stressed out about going underground whilst pregnant, nobody knowing about it. I forgot my self-rescuer. Luckily, my mate Noah, he was on night shift, and we swapped when I came in, because I just was like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot it. First time in my whole underground career I'd forgotten it. But yeah, so that was just, it was really stressful, really awful. I was like, how come there's nothing for me here? Like, this is just bullshit. And then there was one final thing that kind of clinched it, and we had a new manager that was coming on site, and he was our essentially asset president type fella. He was new, and he introduced, he had someone with him that was kind of following it around, and he was like, oh, this is blah, blah, she's passionate about diversity and stuff. And I was like, diversity and stuff? Like, are you for real? I was not impressed. And I thought, this is rubbish. Just thought, you know what? I'd come back. This was on I'd come back after having my son Zach. And I sat down that night and I wrote this big story about what the day in my life was like, because I was just like, you guys have no idea what a day in my life looks like. I've got to get my son to daycare in the morning, and then I got to get myself to work. And then, you know, like you get stared at while you're standing in the room waiting to, in the meeting room waiting to go underground. Everyone comes up from night shift. You feel, you know, like there's all these like barriers. And I basically just wrote down like everything in my life that kind of stands in my way. And I was like, I just can't deal with it. Like it's not so much I couldn't deal with it, but I just thought this is bullshit. Like we can do better. So yeah, that was kind of my big part. And then so that story ended up being shared. I gave permission for it to be shared. I shared it with my friend who was the H&S manager, and she was like, this is really powerful stuff. And I was like, really? I was just real pissed off because there was all these things in my way. And she was like, do you mind if I share this? And so she actually ended up sharing it with the CEO, and he was like, he just said, you know what, like, I can't believe this is your experience. Sorry, I can see one of my children coming in. Are you like this? Oh, thank you, darling. Yeah, so he ended up giving us, I've been trying to get funding for underground toilets for like 6 years, and we ended up getting the funding for underground toilets after he read my story. So I was like, wow, that's the impact of a little story. Yeah, so it was just, it's always been something I was passionate about, but that really, like, those few events were just like, you know what, like, shit's got to change, and I can't wait for other people to do it. Like, no one's doing it, I'm going to do it.
And that's correct. Like the barriers that people don't realise that are down there in just the simple human needs, like, you know, amenities. And when employees are engaged, it positively affects the organisation. So why stop there at amenities? You know, if organisations can turn engagement into passion, like you have, look at the passion you have, it has a more significant effect on production, innovation, and even diversity and inclusion. So it's important to understand how different concepts like, you know, human needs interconnect when trying to create a sustainable diversity and inclusion initiative. So I think, yeah, what you pioneered there and what you created, and it has grown. It's definitely grown. We have a lot more women in underground now, but still not enough. But yes, hopefully those introductions that you've spoke about are getting bigger and better and more available. So with your, what do you like most about your current role, and with your role with She's Free to Be, what do you find most challenging with it?
Definitely my favourite part is always the people engagement. There's a saying in New Zealand, I'm going to cut off the first half of it, and I'm probably not a great Māori speaker. However, it's te tangata, te tangata, te tangata. It's the people, it's the people, it's the people. So basically asking what the most important thing is, and it's always people, and it always will be people. So that's probably my favorite part, is just connecting with others and sharing my knowledge. So I did some personal work a couple of years ago, and didn't realize how enthusiastic I was about education, like educating others. And I was like, oh, actually, I didn't realize that that's totally up my alley. Like, I am an enthusiastic educator, and I bring all of that to try to make change and tell stories that, you know, my personal stories that can help make change. So my favorite part about it is really just collaborating with people and helping people. Like, you know, everyone, I'd assume most people love to help, but yeah, it's definitely so important to have those educational tools and the tools that She's Free to Be provides, so that people can actually help other women. So the impact, it's like the ripples, you know, there's one little drop and that's me, but the ripple effect, like, even I've been having these conversations with people for, you know, years, and finally, like, some of it's really starting to embed, like the pregnancy and the importance of, like, yeah, right, like, and it's not just me, there's plenty of women, there's plenty of women speaking about it. But, you know, like, I did a survey last year while we were in lockdown, because, you know, we were in lockdown, and I asked women about a whole bunch of PPE and, you know, how they felt supported, and I was really depressed by the results, to be honest, but also motivated for change. So when a woman gets pregnant, and this is across New Zealand and Australia, mining and construction, when a woman gets pregnant, 22% of them get given the appropriate workwear. and 78% of them do not get given the appropriate workwear. And I was like, what? Like, and so I didn't get really given the appropriate workwear. I got given like, up to size 20 of a normal shirt. Like my belly was poking up the bottom of it.
A bigger size shirt. That was, a bigger size shirt that was deemed appropriate. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I was like, you know what, that's not really good enough. Like, it didn't fit. My belly was cold. I looked ridiculous because I stayed at work till like up until, a week before I had my kids. But yeah, just things like, hey, just like how, there's so many employers that still aren't supplying those things, and they're on the market now. Like, there's so many cool people that are doing that stuff. And
there's some great companies out there doing specifically female design workwear, and they're being embraced. And from boots to the maternity wear, that's a great inception. And I know that many female workers have been so appreciative of that resource being available now. And when we talk about PPE, we need to remember, like, having the inappropriate PPE can be a safety hazard. And so if you have a shirt that's, 3 times the size that it should be, but only because it's, fitting out front for a pregnant scenario, what about the length? It can become caught in something if you're standing beside, a machine or what, with tooling and whatnot. So it really needs to be considered because it is a safety aspect. So
100%.
And as we said, there's some great companies out there leading the way in the female workwear now. So when we talked about, you talked about the She's Free to Be toolkit, can you tell us more about the concept and the relevance that you found? Like, I know what it is, but the listeners won't know what it is. So the She's Free to Be toolkit is available online from your website, but what's it all about?
I did bring props today. This is what it looks like. So it's got all of the shit that helped me in my underground career and working remotely. So obviously women have periods. We usually sit down to wee, and we can be pregnant, but this is more focused on the periods and the urination. So I found it a real challenge because there was no toilets underground in quite a few of the pits that I visited. And I was like, this is pretty, I have to sit down. And then some of the toilets that were there, you would just not be sitting on, right? Like, just not. So I was like, what can I do? And this is when I first started. I was like, how am I going to go wee? Like, I don't understand. And like, when you're underground, you've got your hat, you got your belt, you got your rescue, you got your lamp, battery. You've got so much shit on you that there's just no way that you're going to be able to just like casually go behind like somewhere and do it. And when you first start, you actually have to be with someone the whole time. So that was rubbish. Yeah, so you're just like, oh my gosh. So I discovered the Shiwi when I first started, and I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. So because all we had to do, so I accidentally bought overalls when I first started, and I couldn't get a reorder of like, just normal, like a normal shirt and pants. They wouldn't give it to me, and I was like, no. So I had to try to make do. And if you try to get undressed in overalls, you're standing there in your bra, and you are dead. It's ridiculous. So I was like, I found the Shiwi
back in the day.
I know, right? So, but I found the Shiwi, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So this is what it looks like.
Yep.
And I bring them. Sorry. My husband was supposed to be out there keeping the kids at bay. Anyway, so this is the Shiwi, and it just, all you got to do is pull your pants down, and just slides in and under, and you just kind of hold it in place. It's got a little tube. You can even write like half your name on the wall, or your whole name, depending on how full your bladder is. But yeah, it was like massive for me. So when I found those, I brought them into the site that I was on, because I was like, well, if there's women that come after me, they're going to need this stuff. Especially, it's good for even like when I used to work on drill sites, there was never toilets at drill sites. And so you had to go find a tree. But if you're working in Australia in the middle of a salt flat, there ain't no trees.
That's right.
So there's that one, or so I have 2 different types. So that's in one pack, and then there's this other one. It's a flexible one, so you can like scrunch it up and like put it in your pocket. Yeah. So, and I know there's some people who are like, oh, I don't like them, they're phallic, blah blah blah. Well, I would not have survived without it. So it was essential for me to have one. And the other thing that comes in the pack is we have 2 sizes of menstrual cups. So there's a large and a small. So if you've had kids, usually the large is a bit better, just because. But I mean, every vagina is different, so there's two sizes. So people can use whichever one they want. And there's some information in there with some hacks, and there's some tissues just in case you need those, because goodness knows when you need them. And it's all in a waterproof pack, like wetsuit material. So those are all the things that I needed to operate as a female underground. I needed to be able to deal with my periods. The cup can last like 12. So we do 12-hour shifts generally. So it can last 12 hours without changing it. And usually I just use period undies, which I'm just about to incorporate into my packs. And they're also a better sustainable option as well. You can't have tampons in for 12 hours. This is not a reality. It's not safe. It's not healthy. So they're a much better option. So that was part of my journey behind why that was like the first thing I did with my business, because I was like, I have to share this with other women. Like, there's so many other women out there that probably don't have these tools. So, and I'm selling across New Zealand and Australia now. So there's lots of, even like road crews, women in construction, women, because they move so often.
It's a great idea, because even with us, with train crew, even though we have a toilet facility on board at the back of the engine room, they're not the most efficient systems. And if it's not functioning, we have to actually pull up on the side of the track wherever we can. You know, you can't hold on. That's not good for your health, holding on. So when we get a break, and if the toilet isn't functioning on the loco, that's exactly what we have to do. So I know a couple of the female train drivers have already purchased these, and they think they are great. I'm going to be ordering one myself, but that's all right. It is a relief, you know, you have to do that. And especially for your health and well-being, you cannot hold it in. If you've got to go, you've got to go. And just to have those other little, you know, personal hygiene items, it makes you feel better. It gives you more confidence that you are looking after yourself. So yes, it's a great idea.
The amount of health issues, like I've literally had one of my friends left the industry because she kept getting UTIs because she couldn't go wee when she was underground. She had to be underground for 12 hours and she couldn't go wee. And she was like, you know what? My health's worth more than this. And so she left, and I was like, I can't believe people are leaving because they can't go for a wee. Like, are you real? How is this a thing? So it's, and you know, there's so many other issues that you can have with dehydration, fogginess. You're not really fit for work if you're not thinking straight. And especially up in Queensland, my goodness, you know, it's so hot that you're sweating buckets. It's so anyway, that was where it came from.
It's an excellent concept, and we'll definitely be plugging it. So coming back to women working in these roles now, why do you think women should consider working in non-traditional roles, particularly in the STEM field?
For me, it was always the science element just fascinated me, and also the engineering challenge. So even though like I said, I was always curious. So the challenge of basically winning the resource is a pretty cool challenge. Like, where do you go? Where's the best bang for your buck? You're dealing with what God gave you in the ground, so you have to find the best way to extract that. And then even like I've been involved in a lot of rehabilitation. So even the rehabilitation, I see the door opening again. Enough, please. Bringing me snacks.
Excellent. You're being well looked after.
Anyway. Bless. So yeah, it was really the challenge of solving those issues. And then also, like, so at the site I'm at currently, the rehabilitation is something that I'm in charge of, and I just love seeing the land restored to something, and often it's something like more amazing than was there before. But I just it's that whole picture, and it's just so rewarding. Like, you get, even though I say, you know, there's a lot of aloneness, there's also a lot of belonging as well, you know, like lots of camaraderie in the industry. The boys all love a laugh. Like, there is like never a lack of humor. Never. They've got like, you know, a million jokes for everything.
We all need humor, and that's the thing. To get yourself through the day, we all need humor.
Yeah, 100%, you know, like, and I've always loved the challenge of it, and science is just my jam. And engineering is also my jam. I don't know, I just love making things work and figuring them out so that you can get the best out of what you've got. So I think it's such, also I guess from a financial point of view as well, like it's incredible, like where can you do something you love and get paid so well for it? That's one of my big motivations for women, is like, you know, just because men go out there and do it doesn't mean you can't do that as well. Like the wages are phenomenal, and it's such an amazing like financial reward at the end of the day, and then that sets you up for the rest of your life. You know, those good wages mean you get more super, and it's just like an incredible path to financial freedom, you know.
It is, and it's not just about the financial benefit, it's also about the personal fulfillment and accomplishment that you get from you know, performing in these roles. And when women, a lot of women hear the word science and creativity, they may not seem like a natural companion, but when you view the precision, the critical thinking, data-driven methods applied in the STEM field, it's the greatest, you know, scientific discoveries are born out of history, and creativity and curiosity, like you said, and a desire to do things differently. And a lot of science and creativity has been founded by women. So
yeah, we're pretty awesome.
They are. There's some pretty awesome women out there in the STEM field. So I think STEM, for aspiring scientists, engineers and mathematicians, there are actually hundreds of specializations that suit any student who likes asking questions or being challenged. So we need to reinforce the younger women to actually consider more of these career pathways, because there is that many opportunities available to them. And as you said, the fulfillment, setting themselves up for their life in the future, financial future, it's a win-win. Okay, so we're just going to take a little break and hear from one of our show sponsors, and we'll be back to catch up again soon. In the US. Okay, thanks for tuning back in. We're here chatting to Christy Christensen of She's Free to Be, Inclusion and Diversity Expert. So we've been talking about the toolkit you provide and your experience. And in following that, what do you think what should a good workplace culture look like from your perspective after experiencing so many and trying to create change in them?
I think in a perfect world, and what I would imagine was the best experience, is you walk into a workplace, you know, you feel welcomed and valued and like you belong there. So, you know, you walk through and it's kind of like, I explain workplace experience kind of like a soundtrack, you know, like it could be playing like a lovely song when you're walking along and nothing seems to get in your way, or it could be Highway to Hell, you know, like walking through and you're just trying to navigate all these things that are like kind of bumping into you all the time and always kind of pushing up on you. And you're like, this, you know, it's the seamless experience that you can create. You know, you have PPE that fits you. That would be, you know, that's awesome. You have shoes that fit that are not men's sizes. You walk through and, you know, the feeling of it is a feeling of belonging. You have policies, you know, you're aware of if I get pregnant, you know, oh wow, like I've got a really clear path for that. It's not stressful. It's something that is very well understood. Like, oh yeah, if I get pregnant, it's not that hard. My boss knows what he's going to be doing because the workplace provides a guide. I know what I'm going to be doing because I have a guide. And then when you have the baby, you know, you're really clear on the next steps for that, how long we're going to be on, there's communication channels. And I guess it's like removing all those things that really create stress for you. And pregnancy is a hard time at the best of times. And then to have it be a less stressful experience is awesome. And then even later in life, you know, like when women go through menopause, that's another time that is important that doesn't really get talked about very much, but it's very much a part of every woman's experience, whether it be a really terrible one or a not so bad one and not very many symptoms. There's all these things that we carry with us in our physical body, like in our physical body, and the changes and the differences about us that are just not an experience for a lot of men. And our workplaces, they weren't made for men by men. And that's not like, oh, I'm anti-men. It's just, that's just a reality. Like the mining workplace, and certainly underground mining workplace, just wasn't created for women. But we are 2020 now. It's time to now think through, you know, what is your woman's experience of the workplace, or anybody's experience? Because when you make changes for women, you're going to make changes that actually benefit everyone, you know, like men maybe wouldn't talk about a toilet, but you know, it actually benefits them. Like there's many men that if you hold for too long and you've done that your whole career, it means you might be far more prone to bowel cancer. There's all of these things that, if you help women, you actually help everyone, and you help everyone with difference as well. You know, like I was at a site and we had a fella who was in a wheelchair, and he had a motorbike accident, but we made sure that we set the workplace up for him when he was coming back to work after that, and he was going to be doing an office job, which is going to be tough. It was a big adjustment for him, but you just set things up so that it can feel more seamless for people. They can walk through and not have the Highway to Hell soundtrack, have a beautiful, lovely soundtrack, and for people not to feel like they're just bumping into stuff all the time, just seamless. Yeah.
That's excellent. And I think for an organisation to successfully leverage the inclusion and diversity of its organisation to improve its performance, there's 3 concurrent imperatives that must be in place first. And first is inclusion and diversity must be part of their overall business strategy. Secondly, the organisation must move from representation and numbers to inclusion at every level. And like we said, it's not just PPE, it's just not having, you know, ticking the boxes for so many females on site. It's everything, inclusion at every level. And finally, you'll only be successful if you bring inclusion and diversity leaders who not only have knowledge, but they have a passion for inclusion and diversity, and they can see the bigger picture. So I think organisations really need to embrace that big picture of inclusion and diversity. And there's a lot of organisations in Australia that are kicking goals and doing that, but there's still some that need to make a lot more headway in that space.
I think, you know, one of the biggest things is I think that a lot of the time the women are creating a lot of these things, and that's not a terrible thing, but we really need to then educate the men with stories so that they can understand why. Like at the moment there's a bit of a gap, you know, and we're focusing on, you know, building up women's confidence and doing this stuff, and all of that stuff I'm 100% on board with. However, we need to also focus on educating men about a woman's experience, and you can really, the best way to do that is through storytelling and being like, okay, so this is your experience of the workplace, like how about you listen to this person's experience of your workplace, and you would be surprised how much, like I've had some incredible bosses that just had no idea that was my experience of the workplace. They'd never thought about the fact that, you know, I had a period. That was just, you know, they don't look at me and think that, like they would know, but that's just not something they're considering every day. So
that's right.
It's really like that education piece is that key. And that's one of the bits that I love about my job, is being able to educate people on site. And because I'm a consultant, people can just ask me all the questions, and they don't have to have that awkward conversation with their employees about things like that. They can just ask me, and I'll 100% transparent about, you know, this is going to be some of the challenges if you're leading women. You know, it's not always you don't just put women in there and then hope for the best, you know, like you actually have to understand what's going to happen for her. And yes, if she gets pregnant, understand that journey for her and all of those other things that are important. So actually educating the men around stuff and doing programs for them is something I'm really passionate about, because I feel like they can't be left out of the conversation, and they can't be left out of the solution.
That's right. And we need that diversity of perceptions and perspectives. And exactly as you said, everyone's got a story to share, and surprisingly how interconnected those stories can be to create change. And it's for the better for everyone. So no, I think that's definitely along the lines where we should all be heading. So coming back to our STEM careers, what advice can you lend, and what would you say to younger women or women contemplating a transition or that are hesitant to consider a career in STEM?
Yeah, I honestly, I think that most people should follow their passion. And if you have a passion for science, you're going to succeed in anything you do. And even those barriers that feel like they are getting in the way, if it's something that you're passionate about, and you know, I know a lot of young women that are passionate about science and engineering, and they get turned off because they think, oh, like, you know, that's not the career for me, because there's this boundary, or, you know, girls don't do maths or whatever. I used to have that belief about myself that I was bad at maths, and then I like started to get into it, and I was like, oh, you know, maths is actually just a language and a story, and you just need to understand the language and the story, and it's not actually as hard as you think. So it's really just about being open to understanding that, yeah, there will be barriers in your way. We're working to break them down, but there will be barriers, and we can provide women with the tools to navigate those, and also organizations to help women navigate those, so that they're just not an issue anymore. But it's such a cool industry, especially, I mean, mining is my jam, but also lots to do with construction. Everything's so exciting. It moves so fast paced, like you're never bored. I've never had a bored day in my whole life. Like there's always something going on, and there's always another challenge to step into, and there's so much opportunity at the moment that you really you kind of, if you have a passion for that stuff, you're really missing out. And you know, certainly even for mothers with their daughters, you know, like often my daughter, I try to encourage as much as possible to explore everything, because it really starts from an early age as well. And as mothers, we can make sure that we can support them through that curiosity, because I think, I mean, most of science, engineering, maths, technology, it's all based on curiosity and just tapping into things that women are interested in, and then encouraging them in that way. So, and there's so many amazing organizations doing things to support women. Yeah,
that's right. And I love the interpretation you said of mathematics about language and understanding it. That's a great interpretation. But also, yes, for women, mothers, aunties, sisters, encourage the younger women to be curious. And that's exactly how we learn. Experiment with things, you know, ask the questions, find a role model or a mentor, or someone that, you know, a female that works in an industry. If you're interested in it, ask that person questions and find out more. And yeah, that's right. Feed the curiosity and build on that. I think that's great. And like today, we've not been one to shy away from conversations here, like whether we're talking about managing anxiety or nuanced subjects like gender, pleasure, sexual health. We're striving to create a safe place where no subject is too awkward or embarrassing to discuss. And that's for men and women at the workplace, because, you know, we've had the big push over the last couple of years for men being open about their mental health. And I know I've in my family, I have two adult sons, that we've always tried to encourage them to be open with their communication and with their emotions. And for men to talk about those kind of things at work now, that's, you know, that's a great thing. It's happening. It's starting to happen. It's slow, but it's starting to happen. But all conversations should be welcomed and open in the workplace. So there should be a framework that does cover those areas for everyone. And I think, yeah, the story of women in varied industries is one that shows that fighting for a better and more equal society can make deep and lasting improvements to our built environment and the society we serve. So get into STEM.
Yeah.
So
yes.
What are top 3 things you believe organisations within the industry can do to be more inclusive for females? Like we've been talking about it all morning, but is there any three main things you think that they need to look at?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, my focus has always more been women's health. So if I know that it can be difficult on some work sites, but have some damn toilets. They are out there. They're not very hard to install. And if you have women that are working remotely and maybe you haven't quite got them in place yet, there's the toolkits that I've created so that at least you can bridge that gap, you know, because there's not always going to be a toilet everywhere, you know, like I mean, when one of my old pits is like 50 kilometers of roadway, you're not going to have a toilet everywhere, but you just need to provide women with the tools she needs to be happy, healthy, and her well-being being supported at work. So that would be my first thing, is either the main thing is have toilets, but if they are not available, then make sure you have an alternative plan, like my alternative plan with the toolkits.
Yeah, right.
Second thing, PPE for women, my goodness, like just get it done. It's out there and it's not that hard. And you know what, the more people are like, oh, it's more expensive for women, and yes, it is right now, unfortunately, because of the powers that be to decided that for some reason smaller clothes are more expensive. However,
Exactly.
if there is everybody buying those things, the price will come down, and it won't be that hard to create the change in that space for the price point, because at the end of the day, the demand will be rising. So putting women in unisex clothes and in unisex gumboots that are actually just male sizes is inadequate these days, because there is, well, to be fair, I'm still waiting. If there's anybody out there, create a gumboot for women, that would be fabulous. Thank you, especially underground ones. But yeah, there's so just having that stuff.
And it comes back to professional branding too. Remember that these employees are representing these companies. So if they're getting around with ill-fitting clothing, they're not doing the company brand that good of, representation, are they? So
Yeah, no.
I think it's a big thing that, yes, that the companies take on board. It should be just, female workwear apparel and the male workwear apparel.
Yeah.
Specific to, to everyone's to fit. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, certainly. And even like I there's a video on my LinkedIn, but I literally have scars on my heels from 10 years in men's underground boots. 10 years in men's underground boots has like destroyed my heels. But I found these really awesome boots called Crawford boots, which have like a wedge in the front of them. So think about the front of your ankle. It's a wedge and it pushes your foot back. And that's always been my problem, is that like the ankle space was always massive for like a man's foot. And because I have slender ankles, like it just didn't work. But they have this really cool technology that pushes your foot to the back of it. And then you can actually fit the gum boots properly. And they have been the only gum boots for underground that I've ever found that fit. Yeah. So, but you can't have women having permanent scars on their heels from working underground. Like it shouldn't be a thing. Yeah.
And I had my own experience when I first started out in train driving. We had men's boots, work boots. And so if we have an issue with our train and we have to pull up midway on our journey out in track, we have to walk our train. So our train's just over 2 kilometres in length. So you have to walk to the end of the train and fault find, diagnose, find out what the issue is. And then you have to walk back. So not long after I started, I had new boots, of course, but they were men's boots. And by the time I'd had to walk the train about 4 or 5 times that day. And the last time I got back up on board, I had to take my boots off, and I had like blisters on my heels about that round. And I had to keep my boots off for the whole rest of the journey, soak some hand towel in warm water and like try and ease the blisters. And then wrap them with some medic tape and put my socks and boots back on for the end of the shift. But I've now got female fitted work boots that are light, they're comfortable, they fit extremely well, and they are a godsend. Like to walk that train 3 or 4 times, it's not a problem anymore, and I don't have any issues. But as you said, we've got those scars on our heels from ill-fitting PPE. And considering that, the third thing, we didn't get to your third.
Third thing is always, so it's from an employee point of view and also an employer point of view. So for the employer, consider how your pregnant worker is going to navigate being pregnant in your workplace, because especially in our like heavy industries, there's far more hazards and things like that. So then to actually consider the experience, but from an employee point of view, for all the women out there, I found what was effective for me is actually to have really clear lines of communication about, this is what the doctor's saying to me, this is what he's advising me. Have a really good like communication with your boss about it, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need, because every pregnancy is different. We can have a plan if we want, but everyone's going to go through different things. But to actually just keep those lines of communication open, and even when you're thinking about how long am I going to take off, okay, I'm going to take 6 months off. That doesn't mean you're tied to that, but give them a guideline so they know what they're going to have to manage too, and so that there's a real respectful back and forth communication going on, and then they can match what you're saying with what, with their plan for things, because people think women that are pregnant are a burden, and it should be this incredible, amazing, celebrated time in our life, because we are literally creating humanity. Like, without us, humankind does not exist, and it will not keep going. So we just need to understand that journey, so that there's not the stress for your boss who doesn't have a plan, not the stress for you who's got no idea what the plan is or how you even navigate it. So it's one of the things I'm most passionate about, is helping in that space, because of my shitty experience.
But that's how we all learn. By having these experiences, sharing them, and creating, improvement. That's what it's all about. And if nothing else, the mining and other industries, they could become more curious about, this hierarchy that we're talking about and the associated human needs, and seek to address them further. Meet the outcomes while supporting the needs of the most important resource they have, the workers. And, it's easy yet misguided to dismiss a person's circumstances, limitations or challenges, and just push them to do as they are told, than to expect those very people to produce at an acceptable or above acceptable level. So I think that's great advice. Chrissy, thanks. It's been a great conversation, and one that is sometimes it's not always entered into quite so liberally. I think we've had a great conversation today, and opened up some taboo things that people just would go, oh no, we can't talk about that. They're conversations that have got to be had, and they've got to be shared. So thank you for sharing them with us today. We'll put your links up to your website and to the toolkit up under our show notes this afternoon. And I ask that you take care and stay safe. And we'll look forward to talking to you again later in the year. And hopefully we'll get to meet you and come over. We'll come over.
Fingers crossed.
We're allowed to
Fingers
again.
crossed. Yeah, and I did have a special offer for anybody listening as well.
Definitely. Tell us all about it.
So for the next month on my website, if anyone wants to order a toolkit, is 10% off if you just put Kickass in as the discount code. So 10% off on the She's Free to Be toolkits.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chrissy. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk to you later.
Will do. Thanks, Jodie. See ya.
Thank you. We're just going to hear from one of our show's sponsors, and we'll be back to wrap it up.
Is a published author for her book High Heels to High Vis, and has been named an Amazon #1 bestseller. Telling the story about Jo's transition from the corporate sector into industry, High Heels to High Vis acts as a guide for women who are considering a non-traditional role and career. High Heels to High Vis is available for purchase online at all leading bookstores, including Amazon, Dimex, Waterstones and eBay.
Well, that's it, guys. I do hope you have enjoyed our show and our guest. A very big special thank you to Christy Christensen of She's Free to Be for sharing so much invaluable information with us. And I hope you've all found the information inspiring, and it gives you something to ponder and perhaps action over the weekend. Don't forget Christy's Kickass promotion and discount if you order a toolkit off her website. Just quote Kickass. Now, why business leaders must take note, you'll see so many organisations realising that they can't recruit the top talent unless they have an environment that is inclusive in nature. And that starts with making a commitment. It starts at the top of the house. The leadership has to say, we are on board for anything and everything. And look, we're now in 2021. Let's actually make it happen. You have to really, even if it's just a small movement, make the effort to move forward. Have these conversations. Bring in an expert such as Christy to talk to your organisation. Make an effort that is going to actually really make an impact and help you understand the struggle. Now, all of this work is tied to leadership. Everything around empowerment is connected to leadership. It's the overarching concept that really binds us all. You could be talking about diversity, inclusion, equality, equity, empowerment, inspiration or access. All of it stems to leadership. You either have leadership or you don't. And if you don't, then you need to figure out ways to grow that, because that's going to lead to all of these other things. And as I always say, I really appreciate you guys giving me your time to listen to this radio show. You can find more information on this episode and Christy's links for She's Free to Be in the show notes or on my social media pages, either on Facebook, LinkedIn or Instagram. Be sure to tune in again next week where we're going to chat with Amanda Valverde of Live in Peace, a mindset mentor. Reach out to me and follow me on Kickass Women or Jo Sainsbury's social media pages if you haven't already. And I'd love to really hear from you guys. Show some love for Kickass Radio Show by leaving me a review on BBS Radio Network. Well, that's it. That's all for today's show. Thanks for your company and for listening to Kickass Radio. It's not goodbye, but see you later. Stay safe and well. Keep in touch. Pos comes. Go on, get your glow on. Become a glow-getter. See you next week, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Kickass Radio, where we kick goals and deliver empowering conversations for women. Want to hear more from Kickass Women and Jo Sainsbury? Visit the Kickass Women website or follow Kickass Women on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. See you on the next episode of Kickass Radio.